Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to this new session of the A Pranzo con il NIC webinars. This is Francesco Alibrandi speaking, PMI NIC volunteer and branch Friuli Venezia Giulia director. Today, we have the pleasure to host Sergio Pellegrinelli for our webinar. Sergio is director of SP Associated and a visiting fellow of the Cranfield University School of Management in UK. He is an experienced consultant and professional in management development and program management, and he will be taking the speech today. So before handing over to Sergio, just let me say that any question that will be raised during the webinar, we will have 5 minutes at the end to answer. Any other question that we will not have the time to answer will be taken offline. Sergio will be answered, and we will publish the answer together with the material that he will be presenting now. Now let me welcome Sergio, and Sergio, I hand over to you.
Thank you. It's a pleasure to do this webinar in such difficult times. As Francesco mentioned, I've been looking at programs and studying and researching into programs for a number of years now. My picture is a little dated. I probably have a few more grey hairs just now. In any case, I'd like to focus the time that we have together on some key themes regarding program management, some key concepts. There's not enough time to go into detail, and I hope to be able to provide an overview with some constructs that might prove helpful as you explore for yourselves more about program management, whether it be the standards or papers or other books on the subject. There are many definitions of program management, and I've contributed to those definitions and to the discussion on it. But let's start off with the notion of a program or program management as a temporary organization. That's how the academic community conceptualizes programs, as a temporary organization. And I'd like to hold on to that idea of an organization or of a framework that allows entities, institutions to effect significant change and realize their desired benefits and goals. I think it's important to hold on to that notion of an organization in contrast to the notion of a process. I tend to think about projects more in processual terms, i.e. how to get a specific thing done. Whereas a program, I think, is better conceived as a holding framework, an enabling framework, an umbrella that encompasses project and non-project work. And in some instances, the program management work is more coordination. In some instances, it's much more directive. But if we hold on to that concept of a framework, it's easier to begin to draw some contrasts between, let's say, a project with which I imagine you're all quite familiar, and a program which I imagine some of you are less familiar with. In this slide, I've drawn some stark contrasts. Now, I'm sure that most of you will be thinking, well, projects are not quite like that, and programs are not quite like that. The purpose of this is just to draw some distinctions, and artificially, I've created more space between the concept of project and the concept of program than you observe in reality, in everyday life, those of you who are working on projects and programs. So please hold on to that and just work with me on this as we talk about some of the distinctions. So the first one is one that I've already touched on. Project I conceive more of as a process. It has frameworks, it has governance structures as well, but it is driven in a sense by either a life cycle or a cyclical flow of some description. Whereas the program I conceive very much more as an organizing and coordinating framework. A project tends to be much more self-contained, while a program is much more embedded within the organization processes and organizational developments. A lot of the work that's been done in terms of researching programs is to try and understand how the program connects to and supports the activities of the sponsoring organization or the client organization. What are the boundary conditions? How is there integration between the work done on the program in terms of developing capabilities and the ongoing business as usual within the organization, within the entity? We talked about very briefly the notion of a program seeking to address some sort of overarching or strategic goal. Strategic intent is some of the language that's used in terms of a direction of travel without a specific plan behind it, or at least not a detailed plan behind it. So whereas a project will tend to have a fixed duration, and as you can see, I'm using project in a more traditional waterfall-based methodology where we try and find out, how long something will take. A program has much more variability or indeterminacy in regards to the horizon, how long it needs to be done. The research into actual programs suggests that they either come to an end because the organization has something better to do with the resources, or that the strategy changes, the environmental context changes, and therefore the program is no longer required. So it sort of fizzles out, dies, rather than it comes to a predefined end. Not always, but sometimes. Again, in line with the notion of strategy, the objectives and the themes of the program may evolve. And in fact, the whole notion of programs being able to respond and evolve in line with changing organizational priorities, changing strategies, changing imperatives, is one of the reasons that programs are used and promoted, specifically and particularly for major change. Obviously, multiple related deliveries, and we talked about a little bit between the focus on delivery versus the focus on benefits and strategic goals. So not just about creating something that can be used, but also going that step forward in terms of facilitating that it should be used, that it is used within the organizational context or the social context. And I think the last one, for those of you who are practitioners, is helpful in terms of the difference between the project manager and the program manager. The project manager as an integrator. When I first started learning about project management, one of the key definitions given to me in terms of what a project manager is a single point of integrative responsibility. That focal point that brings together all the activities, the coordination, the direction on the work. I think that's not quite the same thing with the program manager in many instances, not all instances, but in many instances. The program manager can be more of an enabler, a facilitator, someone who can make things happen or help things to happen within the call it the program framework. So I'm using that concept of facilitator in a fairly broad way. Okay, so it is a different role, and I'll talk a little bit about some research that was done a few years ago that looked at the different competencies and skills and categorizations of program management work, and specifically the program manager, that builds on this notion that it's not necessarily the same as a big or as a project manager or project manager made large, not just a notch up in terms of an organizational hierarchy. Now, if you're looking at these and you're thinking, actually, the right-hand side feels a little bit like an agile project or a project undertaken using an agile methodology, I would have to agree with you. A lot of the themes in agile methodology actually encompass the themes or replicate the themes in terms of programs. And there are some subtle differences, but the philosophy is similar in that agile is meant to be responsive, it's meant to be developmental, it's meant to evolve, it's meant to have multiple deliveries, etc. So there are similarities. And I completely understand that in most instances, that project notion that you see on your screen is probably dated, and it probably moved closer to the program notion. Given the complexity of organizational life and the challenges that projects are asked to deal with, that's been the evolution of project management, from being a much more structured, disciplined, or predictive and prescriptive approach to a much more flexible, responsive approach. So in many ways, since programs have been evolving, so have projects, and they've evolved closer towards programs. Let me also just then ask a rhetorical question. If the project can do this work, it can be flexible, it can achieve much of this, what's the value of programs? Why bother creating this structure? And I think that's a useful way of beginning to understand the different ways that programs can add value. This is a diagram from some research that's over 20 years old, but is used still as the basis for ongoing research. It's a schematic, so please recognize it's not complete. On the left, as you look at it, you see the project, the notion of a business objective and a set of tasks. There are three configurations that the research highlighted, and these configurations can still be seen today. The first is the notion, the one next to the project, which is the notion of a portfolio. And by portfolio, I don't mean the PMI terminology of the encompassing activities of change for an organization. This is the old version, or the old understanding of portfolio, a group of related projects. Why create a program around a group of related projects? Well, the reasons may be different or multiple. It may be something to do with resources, how to prioritize the use of resources, how to better utilize resources, how to be able to afford specialist resources. Is there something in the projects that can be shared in terms of reutilization, components? Is there something in terms of knowledge transfer and knowledge and learning that can be pulled together? And you can see, therefore, that the portfolio is about pulling together, coordinating, and extracting some form of synergy value between the various projects. And the program manager for this portfolio project, as the recent research by Maxim Mitrev and colleagues has shown, you can think of it as a coordinator. The second configuration is goal-oriented. One major objective, a series of related, closely related tasks and projects. This goal-oriented is now what is typically regarded as a program. Okay, the goal-oriented program encapsulates most of the adding activities of the portfolio program, but includes direction, initiation, and much more directive and command-oriented. The commander is the labeling by Mitrev of the program manager in this context. The final one here in this example, the heartbeat, is about renewal, about the development of incremental capability, functionality around a course, process, a system, an IT system or suite of systems, or some infrastructure, where numerous different business objectives are integrated into a project deliverable. Most of you would probably recognize these. In the IT arena, these would be called release programs. In the rail infrastructure, this would be the normal way of working. So when a line or a stretch of line, track, is taken out of service, all the activities needed to renew that stretch of line are integrated in that. So signaling, track repair, work on stations, etc. Okay, so we have three different configurations. These are stereotypes. In empirical research, you rarely find them in their pure forms, but no, they do provide a framework for understanding what the value added is by a program, what additional benefits over and above the benefits delivered by the projects can be created by grouping, coordinating, structuring, directing project and non-project activities. Let me just talk a little bit now about some of the ways of conceiving programs. And managing successful programs is a guide that's been around a while. Let me offer this as a complement to the PMI standard for program management. And I think it's quite an interesting conceptualization. MSP is derived from the UK government, and it is used for major programs, major public sector programs. And one of the things that I think is useful just to point out is the outer ring, the principles. Okay, so you can see remaining aligned with corporate strategy, leading change, envisioning a better future, benefits, adding value, something I've just touched upon, designing and delivering coherent capabilities, learning from experience. I just draw your attention to the fact that these are very much themes that are drawn from strategic management, from organizational change, from leadership. Okay, so this is an interesting conceptualization of programs as being the vehicles for major strategic or transformational change. Okay, clearly you can see in the inner rings and the transformational flows that there are processes, etc. The outer ring, I think, sets context in terms of what programs can and do and when they might be most useful. A couple of diagrams just to highlight that. One is this notion of tranches. So for a goal-oriented program, there would be a number of tranches. Again, you can see the similarity with an agile methodology, where work is done and then it's transitioned. Now, the transition is from the work that's created on the program into the organization. So it's taking a related set of activities that should be a step change in capability that when they're put into operation should facilitate benefits realization. Okay, and the whole conceptualization of programs is to break down the work into tranches that at the end of which the deliverables, the outputs are transitioned into the organization to generate benefits, to transform the organization or society or whatever that may be. Okay, again, very simple illustration, but a much broader point. Let me show you this in a different way. So we have the notion of capabilities that are going in stepwise, okay? And each of these tranches or deliverables from the tranches are a coherent capability that allows benefits to be realized. So this is the tranche 1 work, transitioned, tranche 2 work, transitioned, tranche 3 work, transitioned, program continues. And you can see the flow of benefits over time. And I think that this is one of the power of the program and program structure, is that it allows much more flexibility. Flexibility in terms of this, once you have here, what's the next tranche of work going to look like? When we have here, what's the next tranche of work look like? Now, these are not completely flat. They are sometimes referred to as plateaus, okay? This is incremental change, small incremental change, as the organization adjusts and tweaks and customizes the capabilities to more precisely fit the local and specific context. Whereas a project typically is developed in terms of operating efficiency, a program might be structured using other factors, other considerations. One may be strategy. How quickly does this work need to be done? Is there a window of opportunity that will close unless the organization does something, goes to market or whatever? What are the benefit streams that come through? Every time you change the structure of the deliverables, you change the business profile, either in a sense the benefits profile. And if we are modeling the business case implications, the cost, economic and other implications of different structural forms. Target operating model, what do we want to achieve? How is that changing in the light of the organization operating in a dynamic, volatile market potentially? Okay, and therefore adjusting en route. Some of the mediating factors are interesting. You know, this can look like a set of steps. And the idea is that you might think about how big a step is sensible in terms of the absorption capacity of the organization. How much change can an organization take before it goes into overload and nothing actually happens? Okay. How much time does it need to fully absorb and make work the changes and the capabilities that have been put into place? Okay. If we want to achieve the outcome rather than simply deliver capabilities, these are important factors to consider in terms of structuring the program. Which capabilities get delivered, when, how much, and how long do they have to settle in? What's the competence of the organization, both at bringing about the change, but also about absorbing it and realizing the benefits? How ready is the organization to accept the change? What are the stresses and pressures within the organization's environment that make it easier or more difficult to change more? Okay. These organizational factors are not normally a big consideration. I use the word big in project management, but are a central consideration within program design, program structuring. And one of the reasons I think that the approach is more powerful for bringing about wide-scale transformational change within an organization or a societal setting. as I said, this is used as a methodology to bring about significant societal change in the UK and increasingly other countries. I hope I've provided you with an overview in the time available of programs. It's incomplete and somewhat rushed. If you would like to hear more about programs and a bigger, deeper, fuller discussion, then there is a YouTube video that you're welcome to go and look at. It was produced while I was a director of Lucidus Consulting. I'm no longer a director of Lucidus Consulting. So, you know, please use the email address on the first slide if you want to contact me. But I think it's an interesting hour or so that you would find if you're a program professional or want to know much more about it. And I'd be, you know, pleased if you found it useful. I'd like to take questions now.
Yeah, Sergio, thank you. Yeah, actually, we have many questions that arrived during your speech. Yep. So let's try to answer as much as we can. So the first two questions, let's say, are about related to the PMI, to the PMBOK, sorry, the 7th edition. So the first question is about stating the PMBOK 7th edition is more focused on the business outcomes.
Yeah.
Then, is program management less important? And similar to this, again, the PMBOK is strongly value delivery oriented. So, is this inviting the scope of program management?
I think that the scope of program management may be reduced. I am convinced that the development of program management as a methodology has pushed forward the development of project management as an approach and way of working. And the themes in programs, which are equally relevant in projects, have been introduced into bodies of knowledge, PMI, and others. So I think that it's been beneficial on project management. I think that projects and programs can be complementary. I think that projects within a program context can be, projects within a program context can be run more in a more structured, in a tighter and a more effective way. Okay, and therefore we build on the core and the traditional strengths of project management while encompassing the increased flexibility, responsiveness, and resilience to uncertain events within a program structure. Clearly, if a project can do it, don't create a superstructure, that umbrella for a program. There's a paper that I've written on exactly that subject, was published a few years ago, about the complementarity. I hope that answers the question.
Thank you for your answer. Last question, because we are running out of time. During your speech, you have mentioned about similar or philosophy between agile methodologies and running program, so the scope of the program. And personally, I like this this concept to be investigated further. And there is a question about it. Is it possible to apply agile principle within a program? And if the answer is yes, which are those principles and how?
Program management and the agile methodology share a number of principles, and they've emerged as a result of a number of challenges. Challenges to do with users not knowing the environment changing, the need to bring capabilities online faster, the need to generate momentum, etc. Yes, there are some commonalities. In principle, though I've not seen it in practice, but that doesn't mean it doesn't exist, you could apply an agile methodology for the work that's done on tranches. Okay, I think that the value of the program structure is one of having a view of the end point and making significant step changes towards it. Now, some agile methodology, DSDM for instance, almost replicate that program structure, and you could argue that it's a form of program. But it's about not ending up in a situation which is conceptually possible with agile methodology, of having refined a system to the point that it's great, but a step change is required. It's very difficult to make a significant step change in terms of new technology, completely new processes, new facilities, using a pure agile methodology. I use the word pure. Everything can be tweaked and changed and adapted. I think the other one is the focus on business case. Now, agile methodologies are bringing business cases in, some more so and more explicitly than others, but really to look at what is the economic value created and how that changes with an eye to strategy, with an eye also to ongoing activities outside the organization. So programs typically will have a much more strategic view. But yes, I think you can combine it. There's no reason not to run an agile methodology to deliver the tranches, though. If you manage to do the tranches small enough, you could adopt a more conventional project management approach and hold the definition and the scope. I'm very much in favor of combining methods and approaches that are fit for purpose, and that normally requires a deep thought and significant consideration of what is fit and what is purpose, which is sometimes overlooked.
Thank you very much, Sergio, for your answer. So there are other answers also arriving during this Q&A mini session. We will take it offline. I will be sharing with you and we will be answering. So we run out of time, so let me thank you all for having participated to this webinar. Just to remind that starting from next week, we will have the second series of the webinars, starting from Monday. You can see this first 6 events, but others will come, and most likely all the April month will be covered. So stay tuned with our social media and communication. And just to confirm that you will be receiving automatically the PDU in the case you have provided the PMI ID during the registration. You will be receiving a survey for feedback. Your voice is important to us to improve, so please spend some time to do it. And last but not the least, all the material will be published on the PMI NIC website, and also this recording will be available on the PMI NIC YouTube channel, so you can have an offline vision and focus on the items that Sergio presented today. So thank you very much, Sergio. Thank you everyone for joining. Enjoy the rest of the day. Stay safe and talk to you soon. Bye bye.